The Grand Summit Hall of Varani Prime was the largest room ever built by any species in the known galaxy. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed beneath it, and the curved walls were lined with the flags of over 200 civilizations. Every seat was filled, every camera was rolling, and every single diplomat in the room believed that today would be boring. They were wrong. Humanity had only been traveling among the stars for 40 years. In galactic terms, that was nothing. Some species in the room had been spacefaring for 10,000 years. Others had built empires before humans had learned to make fire. So when the invitation went out for Earth to send a representative to sign the Standard Integration Treaty, nobody expected anything unusual. Every new species signed the treaty. It was how things worked. You arrived, you read the document, you signed your name, and you became part of the Galactic Accord. Simple. Kang Doha walked into the summit hall, wearing a dark suit and carrying a single folder. He was not a tall man, and he did not have the kind of face that demanded attention. He looked like someone who might teach mathematics at a quiet university. Behind him walked only 4 people: Baksuna, his trade advisor, Shinteho, his intelligence chief, and 2 junior aides who looked around the enormous room with wide eyes. Grand Mediator Olwyn watched them from the central platform. She was old, even by Varani standards, and her 6 long limbs were draped in ceremonial silver cloth. She had overseen the signing of 37 new species into the Accord. She expected number 38 to take about 20 minutes. "Representative of Earth," Olwyn said, her voice amplified across the hall. "The Galactic Accord welcomes you. The Standard Integration Treaty has been transmitted to your delegation. We invite you to confirm your acceptance and join the family of civilized worlds." Doha bowed his head politely. "Thank you, Grand Mediator. We received the treaty 6 months ago. We have read it carefully." "Then we may proceed to the signing," Olwyn said. "Not yet," Doha said. The hall went quiet. Not the normal quiet of polite attention, but the sudden, sharp quiet of something unexpected. "I have questions," Doha continued. Olwyn blinked all 4 of her eyes. "Questions are unusual at this stage, but you may ask." Doha opened his folder. Article 4, Section 12. The Technology Sharing Clause requires new member species to submit all scientific research to the Accord's Central Archive within 1 standard year of discovery. However, I cannot find any clause that requires the same of senior members. Could you explain why the obligation is one-directional? Silence. Ambassador Lirath of the Feni Collective leaned forward in his seat. His antenna twitched. In 40 years of attending these ceremonies, he had never heard anyone ask a question about Article 4. Olwyn recovered quickly. The senior members contributed their knowledge long ago. The archive is built upon their generosity. New members are simply asked to continue that tradition. "I see," Doha said. He turned a page. Article 9, Section 3. The Mutual Defense Clause obligates new members to contribute military forces to Accord operations. But the command structure places all joint forces under Accord authority, which is controlled by the Senior Council. In practice, this means new species send soldiers, but have no say in where or how they fight. Is that correct? More silence. Several diplomats shifted in their seats. Olwyn's voice became careful. "The command structure ensures coordination and efficiency. It ensures control," Doha said simply. He was not angry. He was not raising his voice. He spoke the way a person speaks when they are reading numbers from a page. Article 15. Trade tariffs for new members are set at 3 times the rate of founding species, with no review process for reduction. Article 22. Territorial expansion for new members is capped at 40% of their home system's volume, while no such limit exists for the original signatories. He closed the folder. Grand Mediator, this is not a treaty of integration. It is a treaty of control. Every new species that has signed this document has handed over its military autonomy, its scientific discoveries, and its economic future to a council it has no power to influence. The hall erupted. Dozens of ambassadors began talking at once. Warlord Breska of the Tohari Dominion slammed one massive fist on his desk and barked something in his own language that did not need translation. Olwen raised two of her limbs for silence. It took a long time to come. Representative Doha, she said slowly, every species in this hall has signed this treaty. Are you suggesting that 200 civilizations made an error? Doha looked at her calmly. I am suggesting that 200 civilizations were not given a choice. The silence that followed was the deepest the summit hall had ever known. Earth declines to sign the Standard Integration Treaty, Doha said. We do not do this with anger. We do not do this as an insult. We do it because we believe that a true partnership must be built on equal terms. We welcome negotiation, we welcome conversation, but we will not sign a document that treats us as less than what we are. He bowed again, turned, and walked toward the exit. Suna and Teho followed without a word. The two junior aides hurried after them, their eyes no longer wide with wonder, but with the sharp awareness that something very large had just happened. The hall remained frozen for a long time after the humans left. In the back row, Ambassador Lirath pulled out his communicator and began typing a frantic message to the Feni homeworld. His fingers shook as he wrote the words that would soon spread across 1,000 star systems. The humans said no. In 200 years, no one has ever said no. Within hours, every species in the galaxy had heard the news. Within days, the panic had begun. In the 3 weeks that followed Earth's refusal, the Galactic Accord did something it had never done before. It panicked quietly. On the surface, everything looked normal. Grand Mediator Olwen gave calm speeches about patience and diplomacy. The galactic news channels ran segments about how humans were young and foolish and would come around soon. Senior council members told each other over private meals that this was a small problem, easily fixed. Behind closed doors, it was a different story. The Accord sent Earth a revised treaty within 4 days. They called it the Non-Aggression Pact. It was shorter, simpler, and came with a personal message from Olwen herself, expressing respect for humanity's concerns. Kang Doha thanked them politely and passed it to Bek Suna. Suna read the document 3 times. Then she pulled up the original treaty and laid them side by side on her screen. She worked through the night, cross-referencing every clause, every definition, every small word that could carry a larger meaning. By morning, she had found it. Article 6, she told Doha over coffee. They replaced the technology sharing clause with something called a cultural exchange program. It sounds friendly. But buried in the definitions section, they classify all scientific research as cultural output. The effect is the same. They get our research, we get nothing. Doha nodded slowly. What else? The mutual defense section is gone, but they added something called Coordinated Security Cooperation. Same structure, different name. Our ships would still answer to their command. Earth refused the Non-Aggression Pact, publicly, and this time Suna published a full breakdown of every hidden clause on open galactic channels, available in every major language in the galaxy. The Accord sent a second offer. Suna found resource extraction rights hidden in the tariff tables. Earth refused again, published again. A third offer, a mutual defense pact. Teho found intelligence sharing obligations buried in the operational protocols. Refused, published. Each time Earth said no, the explanation was calm, detailed, and impossible to argue with. And each time, the document was posted where every species could read it. This was the part that terrified the Accord. Not that Earth was refusing, but that Earth was showing its work. On the Feni homeworld, a young trade analyst named Lirath, the same ambassador who had watched Doha walk out of the summit, sat in his office and did something dangerous. He pulled up the treaty the Feni Collective had signed 80 years ago. He had never read it before. Nobody had. You signed the treaty because everyone signed the treaty. And, as he read, his blood turned cold. The tariff rates the Feni paid were 4 times higher than what the founding species paid. Their technology submissions had been used to improve Accord military ships, but the Feni had never received those improvements. Their territorial boundaries had been set at a fraction of what their population needed, forcing them to buy expansion rights from senior members at enormous cost. Lyrath stared at his screen for a long time. Then he opened a secure channel and sent a message to Earth's diplomatic office. The message was short. We would like to talk. He was not the only one. Across the galaxy, species were reading their own treaties for the first time. The whispers grew louder every day. But not everyone was whispering. Warlord Breska of the Tohari Dominion stood before his war council on a ship the size of a small moon. The Tohari were the Accord's military arm. They were the ones who enforced compliance. They were the ones who made sure new species understood the cost of disobedience. In 2,000 years, no species had defied the Accord and survived with its territory intact. These humans are a disease, Breska growled. They spread doubt. They spread questions. If we allow this to continue, the Accord will collapse. Not from war, but from conversation. His advisors agreed. Within days, 300 Tahari warships began moving toward human space. Shin Teho knew about it before the ships had even left Tahari territory. Earth's intelligence network was young, but it was sharp, built by people who had spent centuries spying on each other and had gotten very good at it. Teho had operatives in places the Accord did not even know existed. He brought the report to Admiral Yoon Nari in her office aboard the command station orbiting Mars. Nari read it once, set it down, and looked out the window at the red planet below. How long until they reach the Marin Expanse? She asked. 14 days. Good. That is enough time. She did not raise an alarm. She did not make threats. She did not go to the press. She simply began moving ships, adjusting patrol routes, and activating defense systems that had been installed months ago in territory the Accord thought was empty. Meanwhile, Olwyn made one last personal attempt. She sent her most trusted envoy to Earth for a face-to-face appeal. The envoy, a seasoned Varani diplomat named Palara, arrived on Earth expecting tension, hostility, or at least cold formality. Instead, Doha met her at the door with a warm smile. He brought her to a room with a view of green mountains. They served her tea. They talked for hours about art, philosophy, and the beauty of the galaxy. Then Doha took her on a tour of Earth's orbital shipyards. Palara saw what was being built there. She counted the ships. She noted the technology. She observed how calmly and efficiently the humans worked, as though they had been preparing for this moment for a very long time. When she returned to Varani Prime, Olwyn asked her what she had learned. Palara sat down heavily. They were kind, Grand Mediator. They were warm. They showed me everything. And? I think showing us everything was the warning. 14 days later, 300 Tohari warships jumped into the Marin Expanse. Warlord Breska sat on his command throne and smiled. He expected this to be quick. He had no idea what was waiting for him. The Marin Expanse was a vast stretch of empty space between two spiral arms of the galaxy. There were no habitable planets, no major trade routes, and no reason for anyone to care about it. That was exactly why Earth had claimed it. And that was exactly why no one in the Accord had bothered to argue. They should have. Captain Han Jinu stood on the bridge of the ESS Horizon and watched 300 red dots appear on his tactical display. Each dot was a Tohari warship, heavy, armored, and designed for one purpose: to break things. His own fleet was 40 ships, escort frigates, a handful of destroyers, and the Horizon itself, which was fast and well-armed, but not built for a head-on fight against a force like this. His communications officer looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir, they are not responding to hails." "They will," Jinu said. He opened a broadcast on all channels, open and unencrypted, so that every ship in the region and every listening post in the galaxy could hear him. "Tohari Fleet, this is Captain Han Jinu of the ESS Horizon. You have entered Sovereign Earth territory. You have 12 hours to withdraw. This is not a negotiation." On the Tohari flagship, Warlord Breska heard the message and laughed. It was a deep, rough sound, and his officers laughed with him. 40 ships against 300. The human was either brave or stupid, and Breska did not care which. "Push forward," Breska ordered. "Standard assault formation. We will be done before their 12 hours are up." The Tohari fleet surged ahead. They moved in a massive wedge shape, their heaviest ships at the front, designed to smash through any defensive line. It was the formation they had used for 2,000 years. It had never failed. Jinu watched them come. He did not panic. He did not call for reinforcements on an open channel. Instead, he gave a single quiet order. "All ships, execute Pattern 6. Take us back." His 40 ships turned and retreated. Breska smiled wider. They run, as expected. But Jinu was not running. He was pulling. Shin Taeho had predicted this exact scenario 8 months earlier. He had sat in a quiet room with Nari and Suna and laid out the possibilities. The Accord would try diplomacy first, and when that failed they would send the Tohari. The Tohari would come through the Maran Expanse because it was the most direct route, and because their military doctrine had not changed in centuries. They would use their standard wedge formation, because they always use their standard wedge formation. So Earth had prepared the expanse. The first surprise came 40 minutes into the Tohari advance. Gravity mines, small invisible devices planted in the empty space between stars, activated in a chain along the edges of the Tohari formation. They did not destroy ships. They pulled at them, warping local gravity just enough to drag the outer ships out of formation. The perfect wedge began to stretch and bend. "What is happening?" Breska demanded. "Unknown gravitational disturbances, Warlord. Our formation is losing shape. Compensate and continue." They continued. The second surprise came 20 minutes later. Sensor-blind corridors, zones flooded with electromagnetic noise, lit up across the fleet's path. Tohari sensors went dark in patches. Ships lost contact with each other. The wedge was no longer a wedge. It was a scattered mass of confused vessels trying to navigate through a maze they could not see. Jinu's 40 ships danced at the edges, firing precise shots that targeted engines and sensor arrays. They never attacked the same ship twice. They never stayed in one place long enough to be targeted. They moved like water around stone. Breska was not laughing anymore. "All ships, regroup at my position, now!" But regrouping was exactly what the trap was designed to prevent. Every time the Tohari tried to pull together, another chain of gravity mines would activate, another sensor-blind zone would light up, and Jinu's ships would appear from unexpected angles to pick off stragglers. Then the main fleet arrived. 200 Earth warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They appeared in a ring around the scattered Tohari fleet, above, below, and on every side. Admiral Yoon Nari stood on the bridge of the command ship ESS Resolve, her hands clasped behind her back, her face completely calm. Open a channel to the Tohari flagship, she said. Breska's face appeared on her screen. For the first time in his long career, he looked uncertain. Warlord Breska, Nari said. Your fleet is surrounded. Your weapons are outranged. Your sensors are compromised. I am offering you a choice that you did not offer us. Breska said nothing. You may power down your weapons and accept a ceasefire, or you may fight, and we will disable every ship in your fleet. We will not destroy them. We will not kill your crews, but you will not leave this expanse under your own power. The choice is yours. The silence stretched for a long time. Every ship in both fleets waited. Across the galaxy, listening posts that had picked up the open broadcasts held their breath. Breska gave the order to stand down. What followed was something the galaxy had never seen. Earth's ships moved through the Tohari fleet, not with weapons, but with repair crews. They stabilized damaged vessels. They treated wounded Tohari soldiers. They returned weapons that had been confiscated, keeping only targeting data and sensor logs. Genu boarded Breska's flagship personally. He walked onto the bridge with 4 Marines and a data pad. The pad contained a ceasefire agreement, written in flawless Tohari script, prepared months in advance. Breska took the pad. He read it. His jaw tightened. The terms were fair, embarrassingly fair. There were no demands for territory, no reparations, no humiliation. Just a simple agreement to stop fighting and begin talking. He pressed his mark to the document. Genu nodded. He did not gloat. He did not smile. He simply said, "Your wounded will be transferred to your medical ships within the hour. Safe travels, Warlord." Then he turned and walked out. The news hit the galaxy like a shockwave. Humans had beaten the Tohari Dominion, the most feared military force in the Accord, with a fraction of the ships, without committing a massacre, and had then helped repair the fleet they had just defeated. Grand Mediator Olwyn sat in her private office and read the battle report 3 times. Her hands trembled. Not from fear of what the humans had done, but from the slow, terrible realization of what it meant. They had known. From the very first moment Doha had walked into the summit hall and asked his questions, they had known this would happen. The refusal, the published documents, the quiet preparation. Every step had been planned. Every move had been calculated. The humans had not stumbled into this moment. They had built it, piece by piece, with a patience that made Olwyn's blood run cold. She set the report down and stared at the wall. They planned this, she whispered to the empty room. From the very first refusal, they planned all of this. The Tohari incident, as the galaxy came to call it, changed everything. Not slowly, not gradually, but all at once, like a dam that had been cracking for years, finally breaking apart. Within 72 hours of the battle, the Feni Collective made the boldest move in its history. Ambassador Lirath stood before the Galactic Accord Council and announced that the Feni were signing a bilateral free trade agreement with Earth. Not through the Accord, not with the Accord's approval, directly, between 2 sovereign species, on terms they had negotiated themselves. The hall erupted just as it had when Doha first refused the treaty. But this time, Lirath did not flinch. He had spent weeks reading his own people's treaty. He had seen the numbers. He had calculated how much wealth the Feni had lost over 80 years to unfair tariffs, forced technology transfers, and territorial restrictions. The number was so large that when he presented it to the Feni government, 3 members of the Trade Council had to leave the room. The Feni Collective respects the Accord, Lirath said to the stunned assembly. But the Feni Collective also respects itself. We will no longer participate in an arrangement that treats us as a resource to be managed. He walked out of the hall. This time, he was not shaking. The Feni were not alone. Within 2 weeks, 12 smaller species, Civilizations that have been quietly suffering under the same unfair terms for decades or centuries announced the formation of the Open Worlds Coalition. They did not leave the accord. They simply stated, publicly and clearly, that they intended to pursue independent agreements with any willing partner, including Earth. The accord was fracturing, and Grand Mediator Olwyn could feel it happening in real time. She faced a vote of no confidence from the Senior Council. It failed, but only barely. The founding species were divided. Some wanted to negotiate with Earth in good faith and reform the system before more members left. Others, led by the remnants of the Tohari military leadership, wanted to assemble a fleet 10 times larger and crush humanity once and for all. "You saw what happened the last time," Olwyn told the war faction in a closed session. "They were ready. They were waiting. Do you truly believe that sending a larger fleet will produce a different result? Or will they simply prepare a larger trap?" No one had a good answer. Warlord Breska was stripped of his rank. He accepted the judgment without protest, which surprised everyone who knew him. Something had changed in Breska during those final moments on his flagship, when a human captain half his size had handed him a ceasefire written in his own language. He had not been defeated by a stronger enemy. He had been outthought by a smarter one. And that, for a Tohari warrior, was a much deeper wound. On Earth, the mood was focused but not celebratory. Kang Doha understood that winning a battle was easy compared to what came next. He gathered his team, Suna, Teho, Nari, and a growing staff of diplomats and economists, and told them it was time to stop saying no and start offering something better. Baksuda had been working on it for months. She called it the Marin Accords, named after the expanse where the Tohari fleet had been stopped. It was a complete framework for galactic cooperation, built from the ground up on principles that the original accord had claimed to follow, but never actually did. Equal sovereignty. Every species, regardless of age or size, had the same rights and the same voice. Transparent terms. Every clause was written in plain language, with no hidden definitions, no buried obligations, and no small print. Opt-in participation. No species was forced to join anything. They could participate in trade, defense, science, or none of the above, entirely by choice. Independent oversight. A neutral body, not controlled by any single species or group, would monitor compliance and resolve disputes. Suna published the full document on open galactic channels, just as she had published the breakdowns of the Accord's failed offers. She included economic models, projected trade benefits, and detailed comparisons with the existing system. Everything was open. Everything was verifiable. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Doha received messages from species he had never heard of. Some were angry, accusing Earth of trying to replace one empire with another. He answered every one of them personally, patiently, explaining that the Marin Accords did not require anyone to follow Earth. It required everyone to follow the same rules. Then came the message no one expected. The Sarathi Enclave, the oldest civilization in the known galaxy, silent for so long that most species had forgotten they existed, sent a single transmission to Earth's diplomatic office. It contained 12 words. "We have watched for a long time. We would like to talk." Shin Teho handled the initial contact. He flew alone to the Sarathi border, where a single ancient ship was waiting. Archon Pelis, the Sarathi leader, was a being of light and crystal, who spoke in a voice like wind through glass. "We built the original accord," Pelis told Teho. 10,000 years ago, we designed it as a framework for peace. But we watched it become a tool for power. We watched the founding species twist it into something we never intended. And we said nothing, because we had grown tired and old, and we told ourselves it was not our problem anymore. Teho listened without interrupting. Your species is young, Pellis continued. You are loud and strange, and you do things that make no sense to us. But you did something we could not do. You looked at a broken system, and instead of accepting it, you said no, and then you built something better. Will you join us? Tejo asked. We will do more than join you. We will stand beside you and tell the galaxy what the Accord was supposed to be. Perhaps hearing it from us will help. Doha delivered a galactic address the following day. It was broadcast on every channel, translated into every language, and watched by more beings than any speech in recorded history. He stood at a simple podium, wearing the same dark suit he had worn to the summit. No flags behind him. Just a man and his words. We did not come to the stars to kneel, he said. But we also did not come to rule. We came to stand beside you, as equals. That is all we have ever asked. Not power, not control, just a seat at a table where every voice matters. The Marin Accords are not Earth's gift to the galaxy. They are an invitation. You do not have to accept. But the door is open, and it will stay open, for as long as it takes. On Varani Prime, Olwyn watched the speech alone in the empty summit hall. The same hall where Doha had first said no. The same seats where 200 ambassadors had shouted in disbelief. She pulled up the Marin Accords on her screen. She read them slowly, carefully, the way Doha had read the original treaty. Every clause, every definition, every word. When she finished, she sat back in her chair and closed all four of her eyes. Then slowly, reluctantly, she began to nod. Marin Station floated at the edge of the expanse like a silver seed in the dark. It had been built in 8 months, which the galaxy considered impossible, until they remembered that humans had a strange habit of doing impossible things on schedule. The station was not the largest structure in the galaxy, and it was not the most beautiful, but it was the most important, because today it would hold the signing ceremony that would reshape civilization itself. Ships arrived from every direction, Feni trade cruisers with their smooth green hulls, Varani diplomatic vessels covered in silver script, Tohari warships, now flying under new leadership, their weapons powered down, and their docking lights blinking peacefully. Ships from species so small and remote that they had never attended a galactic event before. Ships from species so old that they had stopped attending galactic events centuries ago. Their single ancient vessel drifted into dock like a piece of living glass. When Archon Pellis stepped out, every being in the observation gallery fell silent. Most of them had never seen a Sarathi in person. Some had believed they were a myth. Pellis walked slowly through the station corridors, and the crowds parted before him like water. Inside the main hall, Kang Doha stood near the back, watching the delegations file in. He was not at the center podium. He was not in the front row. He stood where an observer would stand, holding a cup of tea and saying nothing. Beg Suna found him there. 120 species have confirmed they will sign the Marin Accords today, she said. Another 60 will sign the reformed version of the old accord. The rest are beginning bilateral talks. Good, Doha said. The Feni Collective's economy has grown 40% in 1 year since they signed their trade deal with us. Lirath has been telling everyone who will listen. Lirath earned that, Doha said. Suna looked at him carefully. Are you all right? I am thinking about all the ways this could still go wrong. That is why we have Tejo. Doha almost smiled. Shin Tejo was, in fact, already thinking about everything that could go wrong. He stood in the station security center, monitoring every ship, every communication, and every movement within 5 light years. His people had been tracking potential threats for weeks. A small faction within the Tohari military had refused to accept the new leadership. A trade consortium from the Outer Rim had been spreading rumors that the Marin Accords were a human trap. An anonymous source had transmitted coded messages suggesting sabotage. Tejo had dealt with all of it quietly and completely. The faction had been reported to the new Tohari government, who handled it internally. The trade consortium's funding had been traced back to a senior Accord member trying to undermine the ceremony, and that information had been shared with Alwyn, who dealt with it personally. The coded messages turned out to be a journalist trying to get an exclusive story. His final intelligence report, filed that morning, was one sentence long. Galactic stability, cautiously optimistic. He considered that the most honest thing he had ever written. Admiral Yoon Nari stood on the bridge of the ESS Resolve, which was parked in a protective orbit around Marin Station. Her fleet was at full readiness. Every ship was crewed, armed, and alert. Her executive officer, a young woman named Park Yejin, looked at the peaceful scene on the view screen and asked the question everyone had been thinking. "Admiral, the ceremony is going well. The galaxy seems to be cooperating. Why are we still at battle stations?" Nari watched a Feni trade ship drift past, its running lights twinkling. "Peace is not the absence of strength, Yejin. It is strength choosing restraint. We stay ready so that everyone down there can afford to relax." Yejin nodded slowly. She was beginning to understand. The ceremony itself was simple. Olwyn, who had fought against this moment, and then fought for it, stood at the central podium and spoke. "The Galactic Accord was built on a promise," she said. "A promise of unity, cooperation, and shared prosperity. For a long time, we believed we were keeping that promise. We were wrong. The systems we built served some and failed others. The rules we wrote protected the powerful and burdened the weak. It took an outsider to show us what we could not see ourselves." She paused. "Today we do not destroy the Accord. We rebuild it. Beside it, we welcome the Marin Accords as an equal framework, open to all, owned by none. For the first time in our history, every species in this galaxy has a genuine choice." The signing took 3 hours. Species lined up to press their marks to one document or the other, or both. Some delegations wept. Some cheered. The Feni trade delegation threw a small party in their section of the gallery, and within minutes, delegations from 6 other species had joined them. The moment that would be remembered longest came near the end. The Tohari delegation, led by their new ambassador, approached the signing table. Behind the ambassador, standing in civilian clothes with no rank insignia and no weapon, was Breska. He walked to the table, picked up the document, and read it the way he had read Jinu's ceasefire on his flagship. Slowly, carefully, with the expression of a man who was learning something painful but necessary. He signed. Then he turned and found himself face to face with Han Jinu, who had come to the ceremony in his dress uniform. The two men looked at each other. Neither smiled. Breska extended his hand. Jinu took it. They shook once, firmly, and let go. No words were needed. The galaxy watched and understood. As the ceremony wound down and the delegations began to mingle, a small group gathered at the observation deck on the top level of Marin Station. The viewport stretched from floor to ceiling, and through it, the stars of the galaxy burned in every direction. Ships from 100 worlds drifted past in slow, peaceful patterns. Doha stood at the glass with his hands in his pockets. Nari joined him, still in her uniform, still watching the ships with the careful eye of someone who never truly stopped working. "You should be down there celebrating," she said. "I do not celebrate well, you know that." "I know." She stood beside him. "They offered you the title of Grand Mediator. I turned it down. I heard. Why? Earth does not need a throne. A seat at the table will do." Nari was quiet for a moment. Outside, a Sarathi vessel drifted past, its crystal hull catching the light of distant stars and scattering rainbows across the observation deck. Do you think it will last? She asked. Doha watched the light move across the floor. He thought about the summit hall where he had said no. He thought about Suna working through the night to find hidden clauses. He thought about Teho's quiet warnings, and Jinu's calm voice broadcasting into the void. He thought about Lirath's shaking hands, and Olwyn's slow nod, and Breska's handshake. He thought about all the ways the galaxy could break again, and all the people who would now be watching to make sure it did not. It does not have to last forever, he said. It just has to last long enough for them to realize they never needed chains to hold the galaxy together. Nari considered this. Then she nodded, once, the way soldiers nod when they hear something true. Below them, in the main hall, the celebrations continued. Species that had never spoken to each other shared drinks and stories. Old enemies sat at the same table. Young diplomats from tiny worlds walked the same corridors as ancient Seraphi, who remembered when the stars were young. It was not perfect. It was messy and fragile, and full of species who still did not entirely trust each other. But it was a beginning. And sometimes, a beginning is all a galaxy needs.